Is it time to return to Diablo 4? A lot of us walked away from the game even before Season 1 hit. I had my own issues with the game. I expressed my concerns during the betas and before launch, saying that it just did not seem like the game was ready to go. I was told that that was not true and that the commercial success of the game and just the popularity of the game proved that this game was ready to go, but it was very quickly seen as a game that took no risks and had sort of a shallow feel to it, the grind, and then Season 1, I said, is going to push lots of people away, and it did for completely different reasons than I predicted. I think a lot of people still take issue with the seasonal restart, but that really wasn't what drove people away. So right now, people are saying that Diablo 4 Season 2, Season of Blood is a good time to come back. Jennifer Young from Windows Central wrote an article about this very thing. I want to kind of comb through bits and pieces of it and just see if my issues with the game have been addressed at all. Is this setting a trajectory for a rudder turn for the game to be put into a better place? To me, it just feels like this game almost didn't even launch on time. They, were sort of seemingly making last-minute changes just to basic character balance, even in the second, or it was during the server slam, they were doing stuff with the Necro, and I was like, this just doesn't seem like they have an idea of where they want to take this game. And I quickly got very bored. There was a lot of decisions they made with the leveling and the skill trees that makes early game leveling in the campaign feel very, very repetitious. You're not really ever changing much at a certain point, and I know that's generally how these games go. It's not like I expect to be constantly doing something new, but I've consistently said that the leveling in Diablo 3 with the runes and how you would always loop back to older abilities and try them out. They'd be changed, they'd be different, they'd be new. Now that you have this rune to try out, so you were kind of shaping your build and trying out different things all the way sort of to the end game and to max level. And in Diablo 4, they went for a very linear approach to the skill trees, and so you kind of settle into exactly how the game's going to feel for a very, very long time. Very early on. I mean, this is before I even got to 50 and did Paragon boards. I was just like, there's something wrong here. There's something very flat and very boring about the game. Now, I'm not telling you should be bored, but Windows Central's Jennifer Young is saying, is Diablo 4 Season 2, Season of Blood worth playing? Here's why we think yes. Now, I'm going to skip down to another section, but I did want to talk specifically about how this is being framed up here. She says, Diablo 4 had an incredibly well-received launch. Those who had been eagerly playing its beta since February found themselves deeply immersed in the game by the time the official release came around. However, the elation was short-lived as Season 1, titled Season of the Malignant, arrived. I don't know if I agree with this. It's difficult to try to speak for the entire community. My opinion was, and I think sometimes we do this as gamers, like we think our opinion is what everybody else thinks, right? So I don't want to project this on the entire community, but the consensus that I got from even when I was expressing my frustrations and my boredom with the game is that a lot of people were with me in that. They were like, yeah, Season 1's not even here yet, and I just can't be bothered to play. I'm not liking it. The leveling takes too long, or the character that I like is just not strong enough. There were people having a good time. I'm not going to deny that. But I felt like the veneer on the game was fading and chipping and cracking a lot earlier than Season 1. To me, Season 1 sort of kicked the house of cards over. It was already shaking. You were already losing people. People were already decrying the game as very safe and very boring and just not something that felt like they innovated enough or evolved the game enough. Even the people that were excited, you could almost hear it in the way they spoke about the game, that it didn't feel like it was landing all that strong. But I do agree with the premise here that Season 1 drove tons of people away. I had my own predictions. I said, listen, I think the casuals are going to say, I'm not starting over, I don't want to start a new character, but it was more than that. Your hardcore players, your veterans, your diehards, even they thought Season 1 was just not at all what they were looking for, and the game quickly was dealing with massive player loss. They're apologizing. They're walking back changes. They nerfed everything. They slowed everything down. Everybody got really angry. It was like, you're making the few things that were fun less fun. So there was a lot of bad PR surrounding it. They basically had to do like a stream where they, admitted that what they did was bad. And it was like, we don't ever want to do this ever again. And I want to look beyond that. How does something like that happen? Like, who's making decisions? How do you get to that point that you're making game-wide decisions that then have to be apologized for and walked back? Like, that's what shakes my confidence in Diablo 4. So I'm not sure if this article and, you know, the outlook on Season 2 is going to be convincing to me at all, because deep down I think there is something generally wrong with the team behind this. I don't know if we'll ever get the full story, but something feels off. And I think there's just evidence all throughout, things they were doing right up to launch, things they did during Season 1 and after, how they've, you know, talked about the game and then had to reframe things and apologize. That just seems strange to me. So I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this game going forward. So I scrolled down a little bit here. And this is what Windows Central is saying, Season of Promise. I was surprised when Blizzard unveiled Season 2, Season of Blood back in August. Season 1 was only halfway through its cycle, and its lukewarm reception suggested that a boost was in order. I actually found the announcement for Season of Blood to be almost like damage control. There was clearly a lot of comparisons to Path of Exile at the time, because they had ExileCon, and they announced their beta, and everyone was sort of saying, man, you know, your season just started and you're already talking about the next season. Many people saw that as almost a reactionary posture. They were worried that, hey, we got more content coming. It felt very thrown together. The announcement just didn't really say much. It was just a lot of concept art, sort of animated. It did no cinematics, no nothing. And I know they don't always do cinematics. That's fine. They're known for their cinematics, but I don't necessarily expect them every single season. But the timing of the announcement felt a little strange. So I think many people saw it as an emergency sort of response. Season of Blood was announced for October, bringing with it a barrage of promises for game improvements. These range from introducing new endgame bosses to eliminating the need to grind renown every season, enhancements to stash management, and the liberation of inventory space from gems. Here again, this list of fixes, it just makes my confidence in the future sort of shaken. It's like, you guys shouldn't need to be told any of this stuff. You know, it's sort of like when I was coaching, and like at the end of the season, I'm not having to go through the stuff that I taught the girls at the beginning of the season, right? That'd be kind of like, why would you should already kind of know this. And game developers that have been in the game this long and have made games like this many times, they shouldn't need told about regrinding renown or management of stash or inventory space and gems and stacking. They shouldn't need told any of that. So that, again, really makes me curious. Who's in charge? Why are these decisions being made? Why are you guys seemingly so out of touch with what feel like the basics? So let's keep reading. However, despite the allure of these promises, I found myself initially apprehensive about the vampire-themed season. The burnout from the game's first season was still fresh. So their interest peaks. I want to go down to why they thought that this worked out. So the reason I'm skipping down is I want to go to like, well, okay, what's convincing you? What changed? Okay. And if you want to read the whole article, be sure to go support the article. And, I don't like reading through the entirety of the thing. Streamlined leveling experience. While I haven't reached the endgame content yet, the leveling process in Season 2 has been notably more enjoyable. This is, without a doubt, due to the absence of the need to regrind renown for those initial skill points. With 10 skill points available from the start, you can immediately begin crafting your character's build, and earning XP feels far more straightforward. Now, she says here, I'm not advocating for leveling as rapid as Diablo 3 or as sluggish as Diablo 2. Diablo 4 seems to have struck a sweet spot in the middle, particularly with the promised 40% increase in XP gain introduced in the latest patch. So, clearly this was one of the main frustrations with the community. It was like everything just takes such incredibly long time. I think somebody crunched the numbers, and it was like once you got to level 85, you were actually halfway to 100, because the back 15 levels were just incredibly slow, and increasing that should help. I, for one, have never understood the need to do that. Everybody's going to sort of live in the end game. You're going to be doing seasonal content. There's going to be other things that they want to do. There's no real reason to say, hey, once you get to level 75, or typically wherever it slows down, we don't need to do that anymore. Can't we move on from that? Can't you just let us level at the same pace, enjoy the game's content loop and whatever it is we're doing, and then pour yourself into the end game? I've said for a very, very long time, leveling is not content. Stop treating leveling like content. Like it's not something that I think we need to continue to revisit. Like, okay, we got to make sure the last 20 levels are really slow, or they'll get there too fast. Previously, the most hardcore players found it relatively easy to reach level 100, but it demanded an inordinate amount of time and dedication. This often made it feel nearly impossible for more casual players like myself. The idea of reaching the maximum level seemed so distant that I didn't even care to try. However, with the recent changes, it feels like an achievable goal, rekindling my enthusiasm for the grind. This season, I'm determined to reach level 100 and finally take on Uber Lilith to claim the coveted trophy. Again, with the seasonal model, hitting level 100 seems incredibly superfluous as you're going to, move on to a brand new character next time. Now, she spent some time here talking about how the mount is faster, which makes it a lot more enjoyable. So again, I don't want to do a replacement of the whole article. Try to support the people that we react to or use for the content. I wanted to, not just sit here and read the thing verbatim to you. However, the mount's faster, and she said, hey, this is helpful. Now, the joy of efficient storage. So this has been a pretty, frustration point for the community. Another town improvement in Season 2, you'll find abundant stash points scattered throughout the main cities. If you're in a hurry to reach the blacksmith, there's now a stash conveniently located nearby, and the same goes for other points of interest. This streamlined setup is a time saver, reducing the frustration of navigating the town hubs. The stash has been significantly upgraded by introducing a search and filter function. This, again, is just absolute base level stuff that should have been in the game at launch. Again, reading this sort of feels like when Cyberpunk made driving not feel terrible in one of its earliest patches. It's like, really? Like, that's what you're adding? You will no longer be squinting at the screen, desperately trying to locate that aspect that you knew you stashed away 2 days ago. Now you just search for it. Okay, great change. Shouldn't have been required, but a great change. The change how gems function has also substantially alleviated inventory management. They no longer drop randomly, and you can craft them at your convenience, ensuring your precious storage is used more efficiently. I can actually do world bosses and Legion events. So what's going on here? Again, I'm trying to see if she can convince me to come back. Okay, so far, no, I've not been convinced. World bosses and Legion events are a lot of fun, and really the only time you actually work together with other members on the server. At least in the UK, if you worked full-time and or had kids to schedule around, world bosses were just part of my gameplay. Weren't just part of my gameplay loop. The spawn times were so infrequent and always at inconvenient times of the day. Legion events, though more frequent, suffered from poorly executed notifications on the map, often leaving me to realize an event was underway or was too late. This was far from the seamless experience one would expect from a game marketing itself as an MMO light. Yeah, this is something I always argued about with people. It was like, this game has a split identity. Does it want to be a seasonal, ARPG, or does it want to be an MMO? Because MMOs are like, you got to play all the time. You got to be on the server at the exact time that the world boss happens. And this game's like trying to do both. It's like trying to be an MMO with like more hardcore MMO systems, like a world boss that only shows up at, particular times. But then it's also like an action-oriented, top-down isometric RPG that you're chasing loot, and every season you're kind of starting over. Which is it? Like, do I grind to 100 and take forever to get really rare items? Well, why? You're not going to be using them next season. You're going to be doing a brand new character. Do I sit around and wait or restructure my life around a world boss? Well, no. So they've made changes to that, apparently. Fortunately, changes come. World bosses now spawn every 3.5 hours, twice as often as before, and the warning timer has doubled, offering a more generous window for participation. Legion events are now marked on the map much earlier, providing a 10-minute warning, allowing me to partake in these activities more frequently and with greater ease than ever before. Here's the thing. This really emphasizes something I've said lately about live service games. If you're a recognizable brand like Diablo would have benefited so much from launching in early access 2 years ago. All this would have been figured out 2 years ago. Just, you're trying to play and all these things we did are terrible. Okay, we'll fix those things. Like, when a team gets this out of touch with the basics of like what a player is going to expect or want from a game, I really think early access can be a saving grace. Now, I don't think every single game should launch in early access, but I think if you're really recognizable, like Diablo, you could probably get away with it because people are going to want to be a part. They're going to want to dive in. They're going to want to take, place or take part of all the stuff that you're doing. And then your game's going to end up being way better when you launch your 1.0 or you have your official release. you also have to consider something, is that if you get really good feedback on the content loop and certain aspects of the content loop really early on, and you have not built the rest of the game, you've just built, let's say Act 1 or the opening area, and you're just letting people experience it all the way to the end game, by the way. You got to get people all the way there. And you learn all these amazing things. Well, you can make foundational changes now before building the rest of the game. So now Acts 2 through 5, the bosses, the flow, the dungeons, everything can be influenced by the information you got from the community. So she goes on to say that, embracing the vampire theme has helped. And also this one here, finally the hunt for Uber uniques can begin. I'm not far enough into my season journey yet to begin Uber unique farming. That's been promised in the latest update, but I'm already seeing the results of it. Beforehand, I didn't know anyone amongst my acquaintances that had Shaco or an Andariel's Visage, but now more and more people are getting their hands on them, and we're seeing the excitement. So they've increased drop rates there to help. And then she says, my enjoyment of Season 2 isn't solely attributed to changes made. I believe taking a break from the gameplay, the game did me good and reignited my passion for Season 2. So this is where I'm going to land on this, okay? Again, if you want to read the entire article, I feel like it's well written, and I like the attempt to say, hey, I took a break, I'm coming back, Season 2 is amazing. What I would need them to do is actually restructure a lot of the endemic problems with the skill trees, with the leveling in general. The seasonal grind can be really, really fun, and maybe that'll do the ticket. Maybe seasons 3, 4, and 5, they'll continue to polish and comb over things. This will almost be like their early access period. And then I can jump in season 9 or something, and everything will feel fresh and amazing and awesome. And it'll kind of be like what they did with Diablo 3, where they took a couple years, and then they kind of reworked everything, and then they got to kind of ride those changes for 8 years. So Diablo 4 could certainly do that. So if it's time to come back, maybe Jennifer Young from Windows Central convinced you. Hopefully this video helped you land. Are you like me and you're like, yeah, still no, it's a pass? Or are you like, hey, that sounds pretty good, I might jump in with Season 3. Let me know in the comments below. This rolls over into a members-only debrief, so we can discuss it there to see, is anybody convinced by this? Is anybody coming back? Is anybody playing? What's your experience been? If you're not going to do a membership, that's totally fine. You can still consume my live shows and my uploads. Just make sure you hit subscribe and the bell button so I can see you in the next video.